the issues to do with the right to demonstrate and picket, but the Kenya Kwanza brigades and lieutenants are stating that it is not absolute. What is exactly the bone of contention?
Well, first of all, as you have rightfully stated, so under Article 37 of the Constitution, we do have the right to demonstrate, the right to picket, and the right to association. And I think before we even go further into what is the bone of contention here, we must get to understand exactly why this right was enshrined within our Constitution. We were coming as a country from a position where these particular rights to express ourselves, to communicate what we feel as a people, rights that would grant us as, basically that would grant the minority their voice, were not respected. And we're coming from a point of view, had you even been seen in a group of 2 to 3 people, the automatic assumption was that you wanted to overthrow the government or you were planning something sinister against the government. Remember those days back in the 90s when that was the order of the day, that if you were seen in a gathering of 2 to 3 people, beyond more than two people, you definitely must have had a sinister agenda. And it was so bad, I mean, to an extent where were you just seen moving around, looking as if you did not have any particular agenda in mind, then you would have been arrested for loitering with intentions to cause chaos or with intentions to basically cause harm to people. So we are coming from a long history where, as Kenyans, we really tried to express ourselves, and regimes that, and a regime, because it was one specific regime that would not respect the rights of Kenyans.
Yes.
And therefore, with this enshrinement within the Constitution, we are basically recognizing the right of people to express themselves. So when it comes to the bone of contention, which is that, is this right absolute or not, the question of whether it is absolute or not boils down to how people behave during this demonstration.
Yes, allow me cut you in. We will be right back in a short while. I'm being told that we will be sorting an issue right there. Don't go too far, but remember that is Ruth Ambogo trying to tell us exactly why Article 37 was enshrined in the Constitution. Do you really understand why? And also, what is the issue that both parties, or rather the Azimio and the Kenya Kwanza government, is currently arguing about, or rather, what is the Kenya Kwanza lieutenants insisting? Are they really entitled to this kind of leadership, or rather this kind of protest that Azimio la Umoja One Kenya is currently working on? Don't go too far. We shall be right back.
Through the morning rush and the buzz, find a voice you can trust, a voice of reason, a voice of direction, and a voice of hope.
Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Live. I'm Cynthia Nanjala.
And I'm SAMMY ADIKA. Rise and shine, folks. We hope you are ready for an energizing start to your day.
Absolutely. We are here to bring you the latest headlines and trending news stories from the world of politics,
business and finance, health and lifestyle,
agriculture and sports.
So grab your coffee, sit back and get ready for a fantastic morning of engaging discussions and news segments.
Join us through our social media handles, #The Morning Live. This is Morning Live, exclusively on EBN TV.
Well, welcome back. This is the Morning Live. Before we took a short break right here, Ruth, you were explaining something.
Yes.
With regards to the issues raised surrounding Article 37.
Yes. Basically, what I was trying to put across is that as Kenyans, we must appreciate why Article 37 was enshrined within the Constitution. And I was coming from the point of view of the historical point of view where Kenyans really had to go through a lot to express themselves. That, as I was mentioning earlier, that, you know, you'd find yourself in a group and it would be assumed that you're plotting something against the president. You either want to overthrow the government or you're planning something sinister and you would have to be arrested. And back in the days in the 90s, when we were fighting for the clamor for multipartyism, you could see how just merely trying to come together and express yourselves through a common united voice would lead to people being arrested, people being killed. And it is unfortunate that we are now seeing that situation right now in the Kenyan context, when the Constitution clearly says that so long as you are not armed in any way, or you're not destroying property, or you're not basically, so long as you're not armed, you're peaceful, you have the right to picket and to demonstrate. And by the way, I understand where Kenya Kwanza is coming from when they say that, you know what, these protests are, I mean, the nature with which these protests are taking might not be what is envisioned in the Constitution in terms of what a protest should look like. But one needs to also analyze it from the point of view of who are these people causing chaos and violence within these protests? Are these people who are Azimio? Are these Azimio supporters? Are these people who are just, you know, generally criminals who have found an avenue to express themselves as well, in the manner of destroying property and robbing from others? And then what is the government's response to this Azimio protest as well? So there's so many angles within which we can look at this protest and make it and either conclude that the protests are justifiable or not. But in terms of what the intended goal behind this protest is, the intended goal behind the protest is actually genuine, that Kenyans have gotten to a point where they are complaining about the high cost of living. They've gotten to a point where life has become so difficult, and there seems to be no other avenue to express yourself. Because remember, the avenues to express yourself as a Kenyan is through your democratically elected leaders, and also through your own means, which involves picketing and demonstrating. Now, when the avenue of democratically elected leaders gets exhausted, in the sense whereby a finance bill has come to the table, a bill that is supposed to affect the lives of Kenyans has come to the table, and members of parliament did not seem to care about the lives of Kenyans, passed the finance bill despite the provisions therein that are putting the lives of Kenyans at risk of Kenyans being in a state where they cannot afford to put food to the table. Then the only other means of expressing yourself is to picket and to demonstrate, because clearly we are dealing with a government that does not listen to Kenyans' voices, or it may appear as if they do not listen to what Kenyans are saying. Because remember, before the finance bill was passed, a lot of Kenyans expressed themselves and said, and they kept saying, that we are going to tell our leaders that if you vote for this finance bill, you know, we will actually vote you out of power when the next election comes. But it appears that nobody cared or listened to the Kenyan voices.
Yes, we shall be right back.
Yes.
In terms of Finance Act, we want to also understand what is transpiring. Remember, Azimio la Umoja is claiming that the Kenya Kwanza government has been able to buy, in quotes, some of their leaders. Muito, what is your take in terms of Maandamano, the Wednesday Maandamano? Do you think it will be peaceful, since Ruth here has clearly stated that the government needs to understand who are causing chaos? Do you think it will be peaceful?
Well, from the point of my understanding, having been there and participated in this politics for quite some time, literally, I can tell you that when people are planning a demonstration, we have seen peaceful demonstrations, certain institutions demonstrating peacefully. We had demonstrations in 1997 where we had institutions like, you know, in the banking sector having their demonstrations and picketing. We also had teachers, and for the longest time, but we have not witnessed what we witnessed in what we call political demonstrations.
Yes, yes.
Because while on the ground, and I tell you, I like being in the ground. While on the ground, and I can tell you, there's some of the tactics which are now being employed by the demonstrators today. You wonder where you get stones in a place or an avenue, a place where there are no stones, you know, and you end up finding too many stones on that ground. How did they come about? I saw a new tactic that is being employed. That was last week. The bag that carries the stones is actually carried by the rider. Then the one behind it to shield the to shield the bag, the small bag, the rucksack, is one of the demonstrators, but now wearing the reflector. So before the cop decides, okay, what exactly is this guy? These guys carrying with the small bags? They are long gone. So that is one tactic. Every group is applying a certain strategy. You saw the cops applying the strategy of camouflage. And I saw journalists complaining vehemently that somebody has copied what they do, pretended to be journalists and all these kind of things, then they arrested people. And I said, journalists are here doing investigative journalism. They go and obtain information, and some of them posing as detectives. And I'm saying this from a background, journalism background, because I've been there also. And I can tell you, when you want to extract information, sometimes you don't go introducing yourself as so-and-so from Media House ABCD. You just walk in, especially somebody like me who has a personality that looks like a cop. I could obtain certain information before they could ask themselves, so those are the kind of things that sometimes work. And these people posed as journalists. Others came as motor riders, motorbike riders. Wanna swing the way these demonstrators do, in the other instances of demonstrations. So they had to apply the tactic of camouflage. But the bottom line, such demonstrations are uncalled for. Cost of living has always been high. And citing from the time we had the economic crunch, 2008, 2009, globally, some economies have not gotten back to their feet. That includes the US, that includes the West. Today, I can attest, from whatever information you're getting from countries like Canada, they are literally running away from their country to the next border so that they can access other areas where they are able to flee from the high taxation in Canada. Okay? When you go to the US, recently, they released the statistics. And some 2 months ago, 37 million people were living below the poverty line. Currently, 40 million people. That's the US. While Africans are still complaining that ours is higher. We are dependent on what is coming from our farms, and many other areas, manufacturing and the like. What you're trying to say is that Kenyans, we have not yet sat down to ask ourselves that critical question. What exactly are we supposed to do to get back on our feet?
Well,
how do we help the government in place to put things in order? So what we have done is starting to criticize with what the Azimio did. In the second month of leadership, His Excellency the President has not even completed putting together, setting up his government. And there you are saying that they have been unable, they've been defeated. That was uncalled for. Well, now, being in the 8th month, we are now going into demonstration. It means it's not something that that has just come up spontaneously, but this is something that has been planned. Yeah. Before,
what is making Maandamano not peaceful?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of factors. That number one, first of all, there are people who generally are just opportunistic, criminals who are generally are opportunistic, who find an opportunity where people are gathered with an intention of peacefully demonstrating, and they find it as an opportunity to cause chaos and violence. That violence is just ingrained in them and there's nothing you can do about it. Second, we've heard from confessions from politicians in the past who have told us how government works when government wants to paint opposition in negative light. Remember one time, former governor for Nairobi, Sonko, actually came out and said that back in the days when ODM or Raila would organize demonstrations, that government would actually hire people to go into the demonstrations and pose as demonstrators, cause the chaos, so that at the end of the day, the opposition looks negative or looks as if, they are the ones causing chaos, and paints the opposition in negative light, so to say. So there are so many factors that could lead to demonstrations being, failing to be peaceful as the goal ought to be. And the third being that, the general agitation that the police cause when it comes to dealing with the demonstrators themselves. That you find a group of people who have just decided we are going to be peaceful, but the police being very, following instructions and orders, obviously, decide to deal with them in ruthless manners and in manners that are not justifiable, or use force that is not justifiable. So when the police automatically decide that a group of people, even though they are peaceful, deserve to be thrown tear gas at, deserve to be sprayed with water cannons, you will automatically find people who will feel the urge to react to that. So it is a cocktail of so many factors that makes the demonstrations not peaceful. But to me, and in my view, based on the confession of past politicians or politicians in the past, I genuinely feel that some of these unpeaceful demonstrations are actually state sanctioned, that within the demonstrations where you find peaceful demonstrators, there are people who have been sent to send the message that, the demonstrations by the opposition are not peaceful, and the leader is also not a peaceful person. And what would make me say that is because in the recent past, and that was I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Raila made a trip to town. Remember that time when he made a trip to town via matatu? Yeah. And he landed in town, and he went to the Dedan Kimathi statue and went to the Tom Mboya statue, and a crowd started forming around him. And he moved from, I think it was Mama Ngina Street, yes, all the way to a restaurant just nearby, where he had a meeting with a group of women. And I happened to be part of the group of women that he was meeting. And I saw a crowd of people actually forming around him, and there was no shop that was broken into. There was no business that was vandalized. And that for me was a clear picture of the fact that the demonstrators and basically the supporters of Raila Odinga are not people who by nature are violent people. The next day after that, he made a surprise visit to Kenyatta Market, and there was no business that was reported vandalized or any property that was reported destroyed. So I think that there is a lot that meets the eye that needs to be analyzed, and critically the truth, found and established to know whether it is the demonstrators from Raila's side who are causing chaos and violence, or this is state-sanctioned chaos to make it look like the opposition is violent and that the demonstrations themselves are not justified. And it is interesting to listen to my brother here talking about how the cost of living is generally high and how the government has only been in power for 8 months. And yet the president himself, when he was being sworn in, made promises that gave us timelines as to when we should hold him to account. When you tell people that within 6 months' time you should expect the following, then you should expect that Kenyans within those 6 months' time to hold you to account, because we cannot have leadership where we keep mentioning and saying, it is still too soon. How soon is too soon when we know that world over there's a practice where governments world over globally, new governments that come into power are tested within the first 100 days. That in the first 100 days we should have already started criticizing your government and finding out, and being able to state that, within 100 days this is what you have achieved, or this is the pace that you have set for the country. And also, I wonder why people who are government sympathizers, and my brother seems to be one of them, people who are government sympathizers tend to forget that at the end of the day, we don't care how long you've been in power. All we care is what is the promise, what are you fulfilling the promises that you made to Kenyans. And in this instance, for instance, the current administration during the campaigns made a lot of promises to Kenyans, one of them being that they would reduce and lower taxes. But what is happening right now, when the finance bill came up, they actually even went over and above and beyond to increase in certain areas taxes, to even introduce other new areas of taxation and further, make the lives of Kenyans difficult. So when you make promises to Kenyans and at the end of the day you do not fulfill the promises, do not judge Kenyans when they hold you to account, when they begin to demonstrate with an intention of wanting to hold you to account.
Yes, now that brings me to another question. Wait a minute. Does the Kenya Kwanza government future or success, is it dependent on the Finance Act?
The Finance Bill, the Finance Act, the Finance Bill rather, has always been there. Every year, year in, year out. The only difference is as it has been spoken. This thing has been put to the public for scrutiny and discussion. Before then, it was just Parliament that knew about it, discussed it, passed, whatever was there. That enables the government. It's a plan. Let's not use a big name that a Kenyan does not understand. It is the financial plan that the government has for a fiscal year. Okay? And next year they'll still come up with another one. But the fact that this one has been subjected to scrutiny, and the perennial critics came up with their criticism as early as immediately the guy was sworn in. Ulisema ukiweka Biblia. I mean, literally ukiweka Biblia chini. It means I'll start working. You get the point? Because this guy, His Excellency the President, is not a magician. So to say abracadabra and things begin to change, I think that's what some Kenyans wanted, the rains to fall from the heavens, which belongs to God, and all these kind of things. We can only plan that, hey, we want Kenyans to get subsidized fertilizer, and that is what is going to happen in this second season of planting. Now, those who were demonstrating that time, majority of them didn't benefit from it, okay? But they're the first to criticize. Today, when the harvest is in their neighbors' shambas, they have nothing to say. Why? Because there's shame, because they would have also cultivated their land and taken advantage. And I can tell you, it's going to be a bumper. Even people of small-scale farming, especially in Mount Kenya where we have small farms, people are actually going to harvest enough for their family before they take the rest for commercial needs. What we're trying to say here is that it's time. As an individual, sit back, ask yourself, and I posed this question last week. The leaders of Azimio came up first, in the first instance, claiming that His Excellency William Ruto is not elected. He's not the bona fide leader of. He's not the person who is supposed to occupy a state house, because he was not elected by majority, blah, 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 and many other things that they came up with. I look at it and I say, the Right Honorable former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, is after power. But the Kenyan he's using is after livelihood. You get the point? Those two things cannot go together. Today, they seem to have adapted that one, but the bottom line, the key thing they are insisting on is that this government is a failure and will get it out by all means. That statement has come out.
Now that brings me to...
So what we're trying to say is, it is not an issue of cost of living, really, to all of them, and especially to the leadership. It's about gaining power. And gaining power is not what puts food on my table. Is having a conducive environment to earn my day-to-day living. That is what I want. So ask the youth, and this I close that statement with a question. When you're paid or lured into destroying your source of living or livelihood, and nobody comes back, and this is evident from the past history, none of them comes back to help you rebuild it, reconstruct that business. I think somebody is being duped, somebody is being misused, and they're being misused by voluntarily allowing themselves to be used.
Well, Kenyans are the people, or rather they're the ones caught in between this kind of chest thumping between the opposition and the Kenya Kwanza government. Well, last week we had the president himself saying that there shall be no maandamano. And we've witnessed a series of abductions, arrests, and all this. What kind of picture is this painting to us?
Well, the picture that is being painted here is a rogue government. It is a government that is not secure in themselves, because the only thing that would lead you to make arbitrary arrests, kill have a targeted killing of a group of people or a group of community, and just use unnecessary force against people who are just trying to express themselves, is first of all a sign of an insecure government. A government that also understands that they do understand that they are not in power legitimately, and therefore they have to do everything necessary within their means to chest thump and thump the authority, or rather stamp the authority that we are the government. Because what would lead a government to basically send the police, order the police to shoot randomly and kill people, including people who are not even part of demonstrations? For me, this is a picture that is quite a disturbing picture on the global platform, because just the other day I was listening to a clip that seemed to suggest that Kenya is now losing its edge to its neighbors because of the kind of image that is being painted out there, the levels of insecurity. And insecurity is not caused by people who are demonstrating. Insecurity is caused when police use and meet force against unnecessary force against those who are demonstrating, and therefore driving away investors, driving away the tourism, tourists who boost our tourism sector, that is one of the highest earning platforms for us as a country. So for us, it is not a positive image when the police go out there killing people arbitrarily, using force that is unnecessary on protesters who are just innocent protesters, some of them very innocent people, some of them being shot from the back, meaning they were not even engaging the police in the first place, you know, bullets moving through the back to front, showing you that indeed these were not even people who are engaging the police in the first place. They're probably running away for their lives. So for me, it is a picture that is not one that we should be proud of as a country, given how positioned we are as a country at the regional level and the continental level. We are considered as one of the giants economically right now, but look at how much we are losing based on, look how much we are losing on a daily basis because of these demonstrations. Had we had peaceful demonstrations that are not interfered by the police, then people would be comfortable to open their businesses, knowing very well that, you know what, nobody is going to be throwing tear gas at my business. Nobody is going to be engaging the demonstrators in such a way that agitates them for them to even start looting property. So it is a negative picture. It is one that is not one we should be proud of. It is one that should be shunned completely. It is one that shows a government that does not care about the people. It is one that shows a government that is insecure in itself, a government that knows that they were not in power legitimately, and therefore they have to do everything and anything necessary to stamp the authority that, you know what, we are government and we are here to stay. And it is unfortunate because the person who is at the helm of leadership right now claims to be a man of God, and one wonders, asks themselves, because remember, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the president. One asks themselves, is this what a man of God truly should be doing? If truly they believe in the principles of Christianity, and because he lauds himself as a staunch Christian, is this what a true Christian should be doing or dealing? Is this how a true Christian should be dealing with the people that he's supposed to be governing and guiding and ruling and leading? Yes.
You look like you have a
I want to add something onto what she has said and make some bit of corrections. One, I wish that she gets to understand that godliness is not cowardice. When you trust God, you don't become a fool or you become a coward. You may have a big heart to contain a lot of sense and nonsense, but does not mean that you do not have the strength to act accordingly and in accordance to the law and in accordance to the power and authority granted to you by the law. I'll give you an example. She has spoken about how one of the former presidents, that was Daniel Moi, and maybe the days of Jomo Kenyatta, even thinking they could arrest you, that they're thinking that you are thinking something negative, something ill against the president. Those are the days of Jomo Kenyatta, those are the days of Moi. But Kibaki came and used the same law without any corrections and offered a better leadership. And I'm talking a better, not perfect, or better leadership. Okay? So what you're trying to say here is that His Excellency President William Ruto, he professes to be a Christian, and a Christian he is, because each one of us, if we don't worship God, we are worshiping somebody else or something, okay? Because we were created to worship. Some worship money, others worship their wives, others worship whatever, people worship something. But let that one aside. His Excellency the President has got the Constitution and the law for him to use, but use wisely and correctly. Kenyans have a right through the same constitutions to live right, in harmony, in peace, and also for the good of the country. That's all about the Constitution. It's supposed to help us live together as Kenyans and for one common goal, life and prosperity. Now, when we come to a point where we talk about now getting back to the demonstrations, self-abduction, she's talking about self-abduction, abductions. And I'm talking about self-abduction can happen, can be a possibility. She's a lawyer. She understands that when you're looking at an issue and have abducted themselves and demanded for ransom. We have had these things taking place. How many people, how many lawyers have destroyed evidence when they know they're about to lose a case and just burn up the whole office. Na wanasema niliatakiwa computers are robbed. You just pay some guys, rob your enemy. Then you say somebody was angry with what I was pushing for, so they stole all evidence I have. So I don't know what to say. Now, these are things that happen. And I'm not talking about lawyers as, I'm just using it as an example because she's in legal profession, she understands this, and any other Kenyan who has been there, we are their clients, we know that such things happen. Now, this is not about lawyers. What you're trying to say is that these things of inflicting yourself some pain so that we can empathize or sympathize happens, okay? So today, we are having the civil society, you know, at the top of their voice as they used to at some point once upon a time in the 2000 between 2000 and 2012. They were so vocal, okay? But this is what the civil society does. It comes to Kenya, criticize Kenyans, and the Kenyans themselves actually paid to do that job by the West, the sponsors. They criticize their country, paint a wrong image so that their paycheck can come. Let me tell you, before we realized that the West was angry with the direction Africa and Kenya had taken business in terms of trade, when they took everything to the East, the West was angered, okay? When the Chinese came in, that's after around 2000. Now, when these kind of things happen, you could see them using their ambassadors, high commissioners, and all forces, presidents could actually attack Kenya and African countries so strongly because they know they were losing out, okay? Because there's a change of a mentality in the among the African leadership and among the Africans themselves. So what you're trying to say, civil society, I listen to them, yes, but I listen to them like any other person who is working for a salary. If I work for a media house that is having an inclination towards that direction, I can only say what the boss wants me to say because I need that salary. And that's how civil society works. They have their sponsors, they can say anything. The worst bit is that they are painting a wrong image to the government and to the people of Kenya.
Well, Sammy, let me just, before you even ask the next question, I mean, it is quite unfortunate when we get to the point of demonizing civil society, forgetting the role civil society plays or has played so far in where we are as a country, forgetting that even the constitution that we enjoy today was greatly pushed for, and I mean, some of the people who made some of the revolutionary, or rather proposed some of the revolutionary provisions in the constitution, came from the civil society community, forgetting how, when times are very difficult, that it is a civil society that comes through for us and speaks on behalf of the Kenyan citizens. You know, when we begin to demonize the civil society space within a country, then we have lost it completely. That is when you know that things have now become, you know, this is when you know that now every Kenyan needs to get to the point of fighting for themselves. Because the civil society space, much as there are those who are sponsored by the West and any other side of bigger, you know, bigger economies to push for a particular agenda, there are genuine civil society organizations that genuinely fight for the rights of Kenyans today. Today, if my brother here is arbitrarily arrested and there is absolutely no one to speak for him, trust me, a civil society organization will come and speak for him, and I wonder if he will hold the same position he's holding today. So as a society, we must not get to a point where we are so sycophantic towards a government, forgetting the role of institutions that play a critical role in ensuring the rights of Kenyans are protected, upheld, and respected by a government that could turn rogue at any point.
Now we see that Azimio la Umoja leaders, let's start with Babu Owino. He was arrested at JKIA with DCI. His was clear, but his whereabouts were unknown for a number of hours.
For a long period of time.
Let's now take a look on Maina Njenga. Maina Njenga, his brother, and I think one of his workers. They are nowhere to be seen. The police are not even talking about Maina Njenga. To make it worse, none of the Azimio leader is addressing Maina Njenga's issue. And yesterday his family were asking, where is Raila Amolo Odinga to address Maina Njenga's whereabouts? Now, we're also seeing that Mathare MP, that is Anthony Oloch, is not to be seen. And my brother there was talking about the issue to do with self-abduction. What is happening?
I mean,
just to clarify before she
yes.
she says it, I said it's part of what happens when such incidences take place. when you're considering the option, can be abducted by the government, by the police rather, can be abducted by self, organizing such a thing to take place. Self-kidnap has happened, and it has been there. But what you're trying to say is, let's exhaust all options, okay? And exhausting all options is allowing the police to say their bit. Like for instance, and I know we'll get there. When it was claimed, police are suspecting there could be more than one gun in the Jomo Kenyatta's house, that is Uru's son. She knows the law, and she knows how many guns one is supposed to own or to have, you know, for self-protection, because she understands the law better. However, when the claim was made, it all went viral, and people began to stand and talk in defense until it was claimed, hey, 28 guns have been found. It's in public domain. Okay? Now, when, with due respect to your former commander-in-chief, it's not just Uhuru Kenyatta, he's a former commander-in-chief, to the police officers, the police force, they said, we were not going to put you into any shame. Okay? They would have carried those things and taken them by themselves and also arrested the son. They said, this is a far respectable family. Kindly take these things to current police station by yourselves. Okay? So the other story that is being peddled around in social media and out here, it's in sympathy, okay? But not on facts. The facts are now being laid on the table. The police have released their bit, and the people who are good in taking pictures, they have taken their photos, they've taken their stories out. What we're trying to say is, that is one of the stories that should be allowed to be completed. Now, when we talk about abductions, have the police spoken about these things? Evidently, no. The abduction of Babu Wino, or the abduction of Maina Njenga, they haven't spoken yet, okay? Because it is within the investigation process, okay? We have seen this other bit, that it could be a form of machination against people who are against the government. But it is up to us again to say, hey, have we exhausted all options? Let's see what the government also has to say, but the government speaks after they have already have proof of investigation.
Yes. My brother here acts as if he's not a Kenyan. He acts as if he has never seen these things happening. He wants to paint a picture that he's hiding behind, let us exhaust all options. Definitely. And especially when it comes to abductions, you know, when in the process of trying to exhaust all options, people's lives are in danger. And I so passionately speak about this matter because a friend of mine in the last just before elections, or it was actually way before elections, disappeared, you know. He disappeared and he was nowhere to be seen. And it's been almost a year down the line, more than a year down the line, and the guy has never been found to date. Mbinjiwe Mwenda, a security expert and analyst, you know, just disappeared from nowhere, and it was claimed that the police were involved, and he's never been found to date. So when we come to the questions of where Maina Njenga is, questions of where Honorable Anthony Oluoch is, we as Kenyans must be concerned, because remember, these are our leaders. These are leaders who are either elected or nominated and represent a constituency of people that, you know, as Kenyans we should be worried, because if this can happen to a leader who is elected, who is respected, who is a high-ranking member of the society, what about you and I, who are common and ordinary citizens, who have absolutely nothing to our names, have absolutely no recognition anywhere that would serve as a form of protection for us? So we should be worried, and truly worried, where these people are. And for sure, I do empathize with the families that are coming out to say that, look, even the leaders don't seem to be caring or don't seem to be speaking up about this matter. And the same, for me, I always say that regardless of whichever political leaning I am at, when something is right, I will praise it. When something is wrong, I will condemn it. It is unfortunate if that is truly the case, that Azimio leaders do not seem to have been speaking about the issue of Maina Njenga publicly, then it would be unfortunate, because he is one of them, you know, he's one of the Azimio leaders. They should be speaking about the issue publicly, the same way they have been passionately speaking about the issue of Babu Wino's arrest. And what would make one see the malice in this government's arrests or this kind of arrests that are taking place is, first of all, look at how people, we understand the law on arresting of people,
Yes, yes.
that you should be arraigned at the nearest police station of where you have been arrested, meaning that Babu Owino should have been arraigned at the airport police station. There's a police station at the airport. If truly he was charged, if truly he was guilty of something that was reasonable in law, then he should have been charged at the airport police station. Why was he taken to various police stations, different police stations? Look at Gaucho. In the process of him being arraigned, being held up by the police, at some point he was actually seriously beaten up when he was in the police cells. So the manner in which these arrests are taking place, the arbitrariness of the nature within which these arrests are taking place should lead you, a Kenyan, to be very worried about their own security as Kenyans, because the government is setting the precedence that, you know what, if you disagree with us in any way, we will arrest you. And for me, and it's not just for me, it is logical that when a government begins to arrest people who disagree with them and plant evidence that is not even evidence that was there in the first place, this is a government that is scared, and there's a government that is slowly deteriorating into a dictatorship. The question that Kenyans should be asking themselves is that, are we now getting into a dictatorship state? Should we now consider relocating from this country? Yes. Do we even have a country in the first place? In the case of Pauline Njoroge, I've heard her side of the story, and she says that the evidence was not even there when they were being arrested in the first place, that the evidence was planted much later after they had been arrested. So one should ask themselves, and we should be very concerned as Kenyans, even as my brother here is forcing us to look at and exhaust all options. The lives of these people are at risk. You as a Kenyan citizen, your own life is not, your security and life is not, your own life is not, security is not guaranteed, because if you dare go against the government, if you dare oppose what the government does, if you dare have a critical voice against the government, then what will happen to you as a Kenyan? We must be concerned. We must ask the whereabouts of these Kenyans and leaders without paying tribute to where our political inclinations lie.
Okay, you brought up the issue to do with the raid at Uhuru Kenyatta's son home that is in Karen.
Yeah.
Is it a way to get back? Remember, I think in a week's time, a week ago, that is President William Ruto said that wewe rafiki yangu Uhuru usipowachana with Azimio la Umoja Raila Odinga tutakusafirisha na yeye. Is this a kind of getting back?
I think you quoted it out of context. The president spoke about sponsoring Azimio demonstrations, not to leave Azimio alone, because he's a member of Azimio. He's the chairman of Azimio. How can he tell him not to support or do whatever he does? But he's saying, when you support or sponsor for a wrong agenda, because when you see people killed,
What is the wrong agenda?
The wrong agenda is the injuries that are being caused on people
by the police.
No, I'm talking about demonstrators. I happened to witness a statement made by one Azimio luminaries, warning people of the so-called posh estates next to the ghettos. You guys don't support me when it comes to demonstrations. So I think it is time you also join in, either willingly or by force. Wait until tomorrow. So these are things that, go on. What are you saying? This is politics. You hear some statements and you wonder, hey, okay, that one has not come from somebody who loves Kenya. What we're trying to say here is that the president was warning the former president not to soil himself with the mandamanos that are there. She has just spoken about demonstrators finding themselves shot at the back. And I'm asking, demonstrators are standing on this side, like what happened at Mombasa Road while Baba was away. When he came back, it was discovered that the gunshots came from behind and from a close range. Those were the reports. The media never went to explain or to expose all these details. When you hear that it has been shot on close range, they know the distance, they know the impact, they know how it's supposed to show on a body. Now, this kind of a thing may happen. The cops are on the other side. How come the bullet is from your behind? You get the point? So those things I'm saying, let's leave the police officers, the police to do their job, because we can't do the policing ourselves because we are not police officers. Those who are on the scene, they have their evidences. Let them come up with their evidence. And that's what I'm saying. Why are we so hasty to conclude matters without having full evidence?
That brings me back to the issue that happened during last week's Maandamano.
And again, about the airport arrest. Why would you expect, if a small police station where a politician is taken, mobs are actually, they mob this whole place, they break into the place, and it becomes kind of chaotic. Even Central Police Station is right here. What you're trying to say is that that is a place, that is an entry and an exit of this country.
Was there need of taking Babu Owino all the way to
So they had to remove the so-called demonstrators. Demonstrators. And she has also spoken that in the process of chaos, hooligans are also there. Thieves, robbers, everybody with wrong intentions is also there. Those are the people who fill up such kind of scenarios. So what I'm trying to say is that they had to be removed from the airport to be taken to somewhere where it can be accommodated, not at the entry or exit, because she's still complaining about the image out there. So that's one of the places where even somebody who didn't know what was happening in Kayole and comes from Karen and goes to Nineveh, the expressway, that person doesn't know what is going on all the way to the plane. Now, when they see what is happening, they'll get the information and take the bad image out there, which is not the correct image.
You seem to have something, Barney.
Well, let us just proceed, because I mean, it doesn't make sense to me at all. It will never make sense to me why somebody would be frustrated, why somebody would move from one police station to the next. For me, the real question becomes, what was the intention? And had there not been sustained pressure by, the supporters of Babu Owino, by the wife of Babu Owino, by Azimio leadership to produce Babu Owino, the question becomes, would Babu Owino even be alive today? Would he be alive today? Because this government clearly is proving to us that they can go to all extents to ensure that your critical voice is shut down. So the question becomes, if there was no sustained pressure, and remember the wife gave us an account of how she would be told he's been taken to this police station, she goes there, he's nowhere to be found, she's told then go to this police station, she walked to so many police stations to try and locate the husband. So for me, it's such tactics by the police makes one get really scared about where we are headed as a country. And even if they were trying to, the mere fact that they had relocated Babu Owino from the airport police station in a bid to, as he mentions, to try and avoid people coming into the police station. The question is, did people actually come to the police station? The next question becomes that by moving him around to these very many police stations, frustrating him, causing this tension amongst his supporters, does it make things even better? Wouldn't it even be better if we all just knew that Babu Owino is at Central Police Station and will be processed at the courtrooms on this particular day, So it beats purpose.
Well, let's take a look on the issue to do with this weekend. We've seen Luo leaders coming up saying that there is an intention of profiling the Luo community. And this is a very critical issue. This is after the Form 4 candidate in Kisumu was shot 9 times on his back. And the mother claims that they were in their compound. They were not amongst the demonstrators. What is happening with the anti-riot police if they are involved in such instances?
Well, first of all, the law indicates that, first of all, the police force has its own, it's a service now, it's not a force anymore. The police service has their own internal regulatory mechanisms, whereby when a police officer goes against, what is required of them as police officers, works against their code of conduct as police officers, they're supposed to be subjected to some form of disciplinary measures by IPOA. Unfortunately, IPOA has not has not proven itself as a capable body to deal with disciplinary cases within the police service because of the corruption that goes on within the police service. That when a police officer, arbitrarily uses force against a human being in a way to in a bid to try and quell tension, or in a bid to try and restore peace where there is no peace, or even just goes above and beyond, not just even just above and beyond, but even normal corruption cases within the police service, you find that the police officers do not seem to have a way of regulating themselves, because how do you expect my own friend within the police service to regulate me? I mean, I don't know why it works well for other professions, but when it comes to the police service, it doesn't seem to work. And it is quite valid concerns that the Luo leadership is raising up, because you look at what is happening in various areas of Kisumu, you look at what is happening in various parts of Kenya where Luos predominantly seem to live at, and it paints a very sad image of a government that is targeting one specific community for their support for one particular candidate, or rather for their support for one political leader. So for me, it is a way of trying to instill fear amongst the people. It is a way of trying to basically just dissuade people from supporting a political leader. It is a way of trying to quiet or make people shut down a community that is known to be very aggressive when it comes to expressing themselves, when it comes to fighting for the rights of Kenyans. And it is quite unfortunate that we are where we are today. From a legal point of view, I think that there needs to be a lot of reforms within IPOA as an institution, because we cannot be having cases where police officers feel that they can go and, they can basically conduct themselves as they wish, knowing very well that there will be no consequences for their actions. Had there been a properly functioning IPOA, then policemen would be conducting themselves properly, knowing very well that there are very stern consequences for not following the code of conduct that the police officers are supposed to follow, for going against the law when dealing with the citizens. And remember that their first call of duty as police officers is to protect, not to harm, to protect. Yeah.
Well, I think on that same issue, I think first may I express my condolences to the bereaved family, because the loss of a child, whether a child was participating in demonstrations or not, the loss of a life, of a loved one, is painful. And that means a sister, my brother, member of my family, I would feel as much pain. So, in very few words, I would call for justice for the young man, whether it lands on the police or it lands on the demonstrators themselves, because we have tried to exhaust options on how such heinous acts are carried out. Okay? That the police could have done that during the demonstrations, and maybe, and I'm not talking only about that incident, also the people themselves could organize to have such a thing for, the reasons that we had given earlier about empathy and sympathy. But justice for this young man, I would say it is needed ASAP. Well, so with that one, I think there is not much to say. Ethnic profiling, I think when there are demonstrations in a place like Kisumu, so violent, it takes place, and it's so quiet in Taita Taveta, you can't say that the police have, channeled their forces, their energy towards Kisumu, yet it's the place that is suffering disquiet. But when you go to a place where it's not as vehement, then definitely, or violent, definitely you would not expect the police to employ such a force in the name of equating, the force exerted on the rioting in whatever areas, because you could see it was so harsh demonstrations, very tough demonstrations taking place in Kisumu and Migori. Okay, but it was unlike what was happening in Ukambani, Wote. So it was different, but there were demonstrations. So what I'm trying to say is that it's time, and let me not justify that a Kenyan should act like a robot. We are people who are created and have a brain to think and make decisions and choices. Let me tell you, sometimes I should look at something that is going to benefit me, something that is not going to benefit me. What does not benefit me, I discard it, regardless of who advocates for it. So it's time for Kenyans to call for themselves to that small meeting, we say. Yeah.
Well, we've recently seen, as we wind up, we've recently seen William Ruto, the president, heading to Isiolo, and leaders in Isiolo, a few of them say, we are now working with you 100%. We saw him the other day, he went to Nyanza last week. Yesterday he was in Taita Taveta. These are believed to be strongholds of Azimio leader, Raila Odinga. Is it a scheme to weaken him?
Obviously, it is. It is. When you have power, you have all the money at your disposal to do with it whatever you wish, including to buy the support of some of the people who are very critical to you, or people who would seem to be critical to you, or regions that don't seem to support you. We have seen it in the past, and it is nothing that is a new phenomenon. For me, I mean, all I would say is that what would be the fate of these leaders? Because at the end of the day, remember, at the end of the day, the leaders would want to, many leaders would want to have a second term in office. And I'm not saying that working with the president is something that is wrong, but what I'm saying is that we have established systems of governance that one does not necessarily have to change their allegiance, shift their allegiance to have development at their regions. What, Jalango keeps saying, I aligned myself with the president because I wanted development within my constituency. One wonders that isn't there a county government that has funds that devolved funds that come all the way down to the county that are supposed to go towards development. One even asks themselves that, when you try to propagate the view that the only way to have development is to align yourself with the president, isn't it beating the purpose of our new constitution, which was supposed to remove power from the central, remove power from the center and devolve power to the local mwananchi, so that a member of parliament does not have to bow down to the president to have development in their region. I also would give an example of leaders who have not necessarily had to bow down to the president or now switch their allegiance to the president simply because they want development, and they still have development going on within their constituencies. Look at an example of Babu Owino, the one who is really being disturbed by the government today, who is under siege by the government today. He's a young man who is seemingly developing his constituency without necessarily having to go and switch his allegiance and say that they're supporting the president. So yes, obviously we know what happens when one acquires power, and especially, once again I will repeat, when you illegitimately acquire power, it will push you to want to devise as many methods as possible to seem as if you're legitimate, and some of those methods would include buying off opposition. But at the end of the day, for me, the question becomes, and it goes down to, as we analyze politics, it goes down to the fact that these are leaders who most probably will not even go back to their various seats, because remember, people vote for you in Kenya. Unfortunately, people vote for you based on the allegiance of the current the leaders that they follow on and support. So if you find a region that predominantly supports Raila Odinga, then the leaders from that area will probably be voted for because of their support for Raila Odinga. So if they come back for a second term and they have switched allegiance, chances of them going back will be very difficult. I pity people like Karoli. I pity people like Jalango. I pity some of those leaders that you're mentioning, because if they truly want a second chance at leadership, then allegiance. Now this is not legal. This is now politics, pure politics, allegiance, and unfortunately that is how our Kenyan politics has been designed. Allegiance, loyalty, and loyalty. Lack of loyalty leads to also the voters punishing you, quite unfortunately.
Well, on our socials, that is...
If you just allow me, because I know the time is up, but I would like to say, insist, politicians are not robots. And if they position themselves as robots, press a button and they act as per the button's prescription, then it means something is wrong with our politicians. Because when you say that I'm being compromised, I was bought, I was what? I must have had some contemplation whether to go for what is offered or what is not offered. And I'm not saying that there's anyone who's offered anything. If you kind of sit down and see that the direction this government is taking is better than what I stood for, then I think it's better working for it for the interest of Kenyans, not for their own interest. But if I'm working for selfish interest, I'll begin to say, well, it's me and Baba and not me and the Kenyans who elected me. So allegiance is not to William Ruto, allegiance is to the people they represent. And that's why they're saying, if my people benefit from this friendship, then so be it.
Well, on our socials, just before I get back to you, Franz Karaoke asks, when will Ruto start working? Well, remember, it's almost a year now, and still a section of Kenyans are questioning, when will President William Ruto start working? Lucky Boy says, good morning, tuned in. Nicholas Joseph watching. Then we have Felix Kavoy, ADIKA, it's overworking them all, Kenyans have had. Franjiri, nice conversation. Danvo D says, tuned in, EBN TV. Well, just your parting shot with regards to the current state of the nation.
It is quite unfortunate where we are as a country, that we are degenerating into a country that does not have respect for human rights, a country that does not seem to love its own people, given how they are treating people who are simply expressing themselves. It is quite also unfortunate that, you know, this is an administration that does not give a damn about what Kenyans talk about and feel, you know, because if they did, they would then listen, they would then relook some of the propositions they were making or they have made within the Finance Now Act that has led us to where we are today. And I do believe that there's something that the president can do. The president can actually revoke the Finance Act, but he has chosen not to do so. And over and above that, the president himself is going against his promises to the Kenyans. And that is what is explaining where Kenyans are today. That is what is explaining the anger that Kenyans have today. And until he begins to act, and until his government begins to get things right, we will be in this state forever. And as Millie Odhiambo likes to say, it shall be kimbi with the police and the citizens until a solution to our problems, and until our problems are heard. Kenyans will continue to go to the streets. Kenyans will continue to demand for justice. Kenyans will continue to demand to be heard, and they do have a constitutionally granted right to them to be heard.
Well, on the kimbi, I think if the kimbi is taking place in their place of dwelling, like Karen, Lavington, and where they live, that would be a real kimbi. But when you take kimbi to where I live in Dandora, where I live in Soweto, Kayole, Ngomongo, Korokocho, Madare, it means somebody does not respect the lives of humans. Somebody does not like me. That's why they're using me to destroy myself. This is a false kimbi. I think when we get back now to concluding, to my conclusion, I want to say it's time to call for national unity. And national unity does not necessarily mean, because when you talk about a nation is not Raila Odinga, neither is it William Ruto. It is for Kenyans to come back to their senses. They are the ones who empower Raila Odinga to do whatever he does in the streets without allowing the president to do his bit. And if there are other perpetrators from the other side of the government, also they are helped by the Kenyans themselves. So who is fooling who? It's the Kenyans themselves who are fooling themselves. It's time for us to rise to the occasion and make correct decisions when it comes to matters that concern our lives. Somebody was saying, the day Maandamano shall be called, that the gathering begins from Karen Shopping Center, then we bombard Nairobi City, then that demonstration shall make sense. And as a matter of fact, if it shall be so on cost of living, I will actually join.
Well, many thanks for tuning and joining me, Ruth Mbogo. Thank you, who's been a lawyer and also a political analyst, together with Muito Mureithi. They've been helping us understand the current state of the nation. Where are we headed as a country with regards to the chest thumping that has been witnessed between the president and Azimio leader Raila Odinga, both of them not ready to let the talks, as civil societies put it, and also religious leaders proceed. Well, many thanks for tuning in EBN TV. My name is SAMMY ADIKA. Until 1 p.m., have yourselves a wonderful day.
No handshake.
Thank you.